Open your cerebral cortex and shift your lobes into upper beta phase, because you are going to have Bitcoin knowledge transmitted directly into your vestibulocochlear. Your host at Bitcoin Knowledge is Trace Mayer, an early Bitcoin advocate since it cost $0.25, but this is not intended to be investment advice. A doctor of jurisprudence, but this is definitely not legal advice. And an investor in core cryptocurrency infrastructure, including Armory, BitPay, Kraken, and Mitagio, but this is not a recommendation of those services. Here, you get fed via direct mind download with pure and free Bitcoin knowledge.
Welcome back to the podcast. We have Ben Ullrich with us. He's from the Denver Bitcoin Center and also helps people use Armory. So those are the two things we're going to be talking about. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So can you give us a brief description, like what's going on with this Denver Bitcoin Center?
Well, we just started this beginning of this last month. We had our opening party. It was a huge event. We were really excited just because over 100 people showed up. We had Jason from Sean's Outpost and Dan from College Cryptocurrency Network, a couple people there. So it turned out to be a huge party. It was a lot of fun.
How big's the space?
It's not too big. It's, if you think about it, it's more of a traditional loading dock space. If you look online, we have pictures, but our back door is just a giant warehouse.
So you can stick miners in there.
Yeah, we've had a few. We actually have some running up front all the time.
Showing people how they work.
Exactly. Show people, and they bring in a few bucks a month for towards the Bitcoin Center. But yeah, I mean, honestly, we're just a co-op workspace. We're a community center. We host a lot of meetups, stuff like that there. And then also we have Bitcoin ATMs, and then we have somebody there to essentially talk to the public Monday through Friday. So people can come in 9 to 5 and use our ATMs, learn how to get their first wallet, all that kind of stuff for free.
I think a lot of people really underestimate the human capital investment. You really have to learn how to use this new technology, and like riding a bike, it's fine with training wheels, but you really want someone there to kind of guide you around.
Right, exactly.
You might fall off the bike and scrape up your knee here and there, lose a few Bitcoin, a few Satoshis. You don't lose Bitcoins these days, right? Hopefully. And, it's nice to have these centers all over the place where you can actually go and talk to somebody.
Exactly.
And they can help you just kind of know what you're doing.
No, and it's super important because, I remember the first times I did Bitcoin transactions, and I learned myself, right? And I was doing local Bitcoins and online and so on and so forth. But, I mean, it was nerve-wracking because you're always worried, okay, am I using, something susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks, or am I using something that's susceptible to yada, and there's just this huge list. The more you learn, the bigger the list gets, right? And so like you said, it can be a little nerve-wracking if you don't know exactly what you're doing sending
and
money around.
You start off you start off with maybe $5 worth of Bitcoins or $20 worth of Bitcoins, and then you're moving up $100 worth of Bitcoins. I think you can not be too worried because you don't have too much at risk, but as you get more at risk, you want to upgrade your
first
knowledge.
2 Bitcoin transaction is a little bit nerve-wracking,
Like, what's going on there?
Is it gonna make it? Is it gonna make it? And the 2 seconds between the phones, you're just like, oh my gosh, did I send it to the right address?
Yeah, so that's really helpful. I've been to a lot of these spaces. I've been flying around all over the world actually, helping build Bitcoin, and it's so fascinating. We used to meet at like a little restaurant in San Diego or in New York or in San Francisco or in Buenos Aires, and now we actually have like a major co-op workplace in San Diego. The Bitcoin Center in New York's like 40,000 square feet.
It's
huge.
ridiculous.
And we get it filled up pretty often. Now one's sprouting up in Denver. Austin's got all types of stuff going on. Over in Vienna, I've been over to a few of the Bitcoin centers over there. They're doing great. London's got things going on. Isle of Man, they actually have government helping out with stuff over there. Down here in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, in Chile, in Brazil, we've got places. I mean, this is a global, worldwide phenomenon. Singapore, I forgot to mention Asia. I mean, there's a lot going on over in Asia, too. So it's very exciting, like, all this stuff going on. In a couple earlier podcasts, we actually had on Andy O5. He's a senior developer at Armory. And he was teaching us all about generating private keys, holding private keys, multi-signature, fragmented backups, like all of these really advanced features of Bitcoin Armory, which if you're holding your private keys, you need to make sure your private keys are safe. So I highly recommend going and listening to those 3 podcasts. building on that foundation, you might also want someone to help walk you through during these armory installs.
There's
right,
little
Ben?
things you can miss.
Yeah, there are little things you can miss. So, Ben, you've actually helped people do some of these armory installs,
yeah,
right?
a few times, for sure.
You charge for it?
Of course.
Yeah, make some money.
Well, why would you trust me if I was doing it for free?
Well, yeah.
If I'm offering to store your money and I'm saying, here, I'll do it for you for free, right? Why would you trust me?
Well, you're a nice guy, right? Well, but I don't know that charging is necessarily a good reason to trust you either. But it goes to show that you can build a little business out of this type of stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Because I know over at Armory, like, we just don't have time. We have to write the code that everybody's using, right?
Exactly.
We're working on the product. So we get tons of requests, and we're like, look, we just can't do that right now. Mm-hmm. And now with John Velisarios, who came on board, he left Accenture, managing all the private keys for stock exchanges over there and other major financial stuff. 11 years at Accenture running the crypto space. He's now over at Armory working full-time to sell Armory at the enterprise level.
Right, yeah.
But we're talking about storing like hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoins. That's just a totally different contract than, like, you know, say you're a doctor or a lawyer and you got $50,000 you want to buy with Bitcoins.
It's a different contract, but it's actually pretty much a lot of the same procedures.
Yeah, very
you're still
similar
using
procedures.
the same ways to store the wallets. Just there, you might be doing a lot more things programmatically, you know, generated and so forth, versus, you know, doing it yourself, but it's still the same procedures to, you know, use multiple factors of authentication, or like you were talking about, splitting up the wallets, multi-sig, whatever the case is, you're still using a lot of the same strategies to protect the Bitcoin.
Yeah,
so
now
it's just most people don't have the resources like the big, you know, the big financial institutions to do that.
And you hit me up outside right before the podcast about, have we got this certification done yet? And I was like, no, we haven't got the certification done yet.
Yeah, I was talking to John about it in Vegas. He said it was almost ready. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, everything's almost ready at Armory. But we have to, like, when stuff gets done over there, it gets done to the ultimate highest level. Like,
there's no room for error, though.
There is absolutely no room for error at Armory. So we don't have the certification out yet. But I did an interview with Michael Perkins. He's from the Cryptocurrency Consortium up in Toronto, another big Bitcoin hub. Yeah. And we're working on coming up with some standards for Bitcoin professionals. And I'm sure that, like, helping people set up cold storage wallets will be something that'll get kind of worked into all of this.
Sure, yeah.
But in the meantime, you know, if people need to get their Armory cold storage set up, like, they can come find you at the Denver Bitcoin Center,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm not the only one, too. I know we have Chad, who also does computer repair at the Bitcoin Center. He is more than capable of doing a lot of the same things, so he hasn't been involved in it as long. But
And if you're not in Denver, like, you go down to the local Bitcoin place
local
in
Bitcoin
New York
Center.
or LA or San Diego or San Francisco or Austin or Phoenix, like, all of these places. Mm-hmm. Like, you can go and just ask around, like, hey, can I get someone who can help me set up a wallet?
I would try and find
an Armory wallet.
I would try and find an IT consultant. If you don't have a Bitcoin Center, if you have a small Bitcoin community, try and find an IT consultant in your area that accepts Bitcoin, and most likely they'll probably know how to do that kind of stuff and feel confident, you know, in helping you out with it.
What I would really like to see, you know, maybe you could make something like this, but if there were an actual checklist that could be followed, so that the person getting their wallet set up could know that the checklist has been followed and that the private keys have not been compromised in any way. Because, you know, the person setting up your wallet might have a photographic memory, and if they see the root seed that comes up and they remember that, then your keys have been compromised.
For sure.
You know? So it'd be nice if there were kind of a checklist that everybody could follow. That way they know the keys have been set up in a secure way, that there's kind of a standards assurance with that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, are you talking about a checklist to take to somebody like that, or use yourself?
Well, actually, it would be a checklist that an individual could download, and then when they go to get help from somebody, they could just make sure that the person's following the checklist.
That's actually a really great idea, because the checklists are available, right, online for those who want to find them. But the issue is, do I have the technical skill to do an air-gapped computer, yada, yada. So I agree, that might be some material we want to put together here pretty soon.
Yeah, so that might be something that you could put together over there at the Denver Bitcoin Center. It'd be great, because then you're like, hey, just make sure that whoever you're getting to help you with creating your secure cold storage wallets, follow something like this checklist.
Give them like 10 words to make sure that their nerd knows those 10 words.
Well, like these are
like blockchain.
Like these are potential attack surfaces or vectors in that key generation. Because John V, he's actually been involved in key generation ceremonies for root servers of the internet and other major financial institutions. Wow. So when that happens, like they fly in like 20 top executives and they make sure that the hardware and everything that there actually are standards.
It's a big deal.
All the way through that entire process, and those standards can then be relied on by insurance companies and things like that to make sure that the keys were generated properly. So I mean, it's a really important thing, and it's good for people to kind of get some hands-on experience with the private keys themselves in the Bitcoin space. I thank you for helping people, use Armory, because it's pretty intimidating, but it's nice to have someone to kind of, make sure you don't hurt yourself too bad on the bike.
Right.
There we go. Thanks so much. We've had Ben Ullrich from the Denver Bitcoin Center. He's also kind of an independent consultant, helps people set up their Armory wallets. Thanks for being on the podcast with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Be sure to get a copy of the free Bitcoin Guide at freebitcoinguide.com. Got a question or suggestion? Record your voice at bitcoin.kn. Don't be shy. To help the show, share bitcoin.kn with friends, post about it on Reddit, and otherwise spam the interwebs. Your iTunes comments and 5-star reviews are very important to us. Please continue tuning in to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast, where we release interviews with the top people in the Bitcoin world. Now take some choline and let that Bitcoin knowledge consolidate.